Good morning, dear students. Let's begin our social science class. Today, we are beginning with our new subject, political science. You need to remember over here the first chapter of our political science book has been removed from the CBSE curriculum of 2022, that was democracy in the contemporary world. So, we have to start with the second chapter of democratic politics, that is, what is democracy, why democracy. So now let's begin this chapter. So here we are going to understand the basic idea about what do we mean by democracy and what things that we require, or why do we need require democracy, and why do we not prefer any other type of government rather than democracy, and why India is only democratic country, and what privileges do we get from those democracies, that we are going to discuss over here. We'll also discuss about the countries cases where there is no democracy and how the people suffer. So now let's start. First, this chapter begins with page number 24, where some conversation between the students of the class are given. The teacher is Lindo madam, and some students like Mary, Ribiang, Yolanda are there. They are to discuss on democracy. When their teacher was teaching them about democracy, the class has itself discussed many things for democracy. So those things which we are going to study in this chapter. So let's start with the conversation. I want you all to take out your democratic politics book, page number 24. We have to start with this. So here, Mary. Ma'am, I don't like this idea. First we spent our whole chapter discussing democracies in different parts of the world, and then we went to find out meaning of democracy. I mean, logically, shouldn't we have approached it other way round? Shouldn't the meaning have come first and then the example? Lindo madam, I can see your point, but that is how we reason in everyday life. We use words like pan, rain or love. Do we wait to have a definition of these words before we use them? Come to think of it, do we have clear definitions of these words? It is only by using a word that we understand its meaning. Mary. But then why do we need definitions at all? We need a definition only when we come across a difficulty in the use of word. We need a definition of rain only when we wish to distinguish it from, say, drizzle or cloudburst. The same is true for democracy. We need a clear definition only because people use it for different purposes, because very different kind of government call themselves democracy. Now Ribiang says, but why do we need to work on a definition? The other day you quoted Abraham Lincoln to us. Democracy is the government of the people, by the people and for the people. We in Meghalaya always ruled ourselves. That is accepted by everyone. Why do we need to change that? Lindo madam, I am not saying we need to change it. I too find the decision very beautiful, but we don't know if it is the best way of defining unless we think about it ourselves. We may not accept something just because it is famous, just because everyone accepts it. Now Yolanda comes. Ma'am, can I suggest something? We don't need to look for any definition. I read somewhere that the word democracy comes from a Greek word demokratia. In Greek, demos means people and kratia means rule. So democracy is ruled by people. This is correct meaning. Where is the need to debate? Now Lindo madam, that is also a very helpful way of thinking about this matter. I would just say that this does not always work. A word does not remain tied to its origin. Just think of computers. Originally they were used for computing, that is to say calculating very difficult mathematical sums. These were very powerful calculators, but nowadays very few people use computers for computing sum. They use it for writing, for designing, for listening to music, for watching films. Words remain the same, but their meaning can change with time. In that case, it is not very far useful to look at the origin of word. Marry. Ma'am, so basically what are you saying is that there is no shortcut to our thinking about the matter ourselves. We have to think about its meaning and evolve a definition. Lindo ma'am. Yes, you got me right. Let us go on with it now. So in this debate basically we talked about how the children of the class where Lindo madam was actually teaching them democratic politics, they started debating about on a democracy, why there is a need for democracy, and even they thought and they realized that they are also ruling themselves, that means they are also having a democracy. Afterwards, they realized the importance of the definition of democracy, but it is not actually correct to just originate the word or the root from that word and take out the meaning from it, just like computers. So that is the discussion that had gone between the people or the children of the class and the teacher. So now let's study further about the democracy definition. So it is a form of government in which rulers are elected by the people. So there is only a form of government where we are electing the rulers and they are in turn ruling us. Means there is no such game of ruling by the inheritance or the family generations. It is not like that. We only choose any of the one person who can rule us. This definition allows us to separate democracy from forms of government that are clearly not democratic. Democracy is not practiced in all parts and countries. There are many examples which are given in this chapter also. So let's read some of them. The army rulers of Myanmar were not elected by people. Those who happened to be in control of army became rulers of the country. People had no say in this decision. Dictators like Pinochet, Kyle are not elected by people. This also implies to monarchies. The kings of Saudi Arabia rule not because the people have chosen them to do so, but because they happen to be born in the royal family. So there is no scope of democracy in these type of countries like Myanmar and Saudi Arabia. Non-democratic regime in Pakistan and General Musharraf. So Pakistan was actually ruled by General Musharraf near about in 2002, and that time it was actually a non-democratic regime. But how General Musharraf proved himself as a dictator and then how he ruled the country and what restrictions were imposed. So let us read it. In Pakistan, General Parvez Musharraf led a military coup in October 1999. He overthrew a democratically elected government and declared himself the chief executive of the country. Later, he changed his designation to president and in 2002 held a referendum in the country that granted him 5-year extension. Means now he was to rule more 5 years. Pakistani media, human rights organizations and democracy activists said that the referendum was based on malpractices and fraud. So it was all about fraud. It was not a true referendum. In August 2002, he issued a legal framework order that amended the constitution of Pakistan. So it was designed by himself. According to this order, the president can dismiss the national and provincial assemblies. Means whatever legal things that were happening, whatever assemblies meetings were to be held that were related to politics, these were now dismissed according to the wish of the president. The work of civilian cabinet is supervised by a National Security Council which is dominated by military officers. After passing this law, elections were held to national and provincial assemblies. So Pakistan has had elections held representatives and provincial assemblies, and elected representatives have some power, but the final power rested with the military officers and General Parvez Musharraf himself. So if any of the party is winning and it has a right to take any of the decision regarding the country, but the final decision always lies in the hand of the dictator or what we call so-called as president, General Parvez Musharraf. Was Pakistan democratic? Now can we say this thing? Clearly, there are many reasons why Pakistan under General Musharraf should not be called a democracy. People may have elected their representatives to the national and provincial assemblies, but those elected representatives were not really the rulers. They cannot take the final decisions. The power to make or to take the final decision always rested with army officials with General Parvez Musharraf, and none of them were elected by the people. This happens in many dictatorships and monarchies. They formally have an elected parliament and government, but the real power is with those who are not elected. In a few countries, real power was with some external power and not with locally elected representatives. So it is not a people rule because some external agency is ruling actually the whole country. Now China and Mexico, a democratic match. So this cartoon actually shows that how we should dispose the garbage like plastic bottles, glass bottles. Similarly, we should dispose monarchy and institutional reforms that are persisting in this world. So here in China and Mexico, both were non-democratic. But how were the governments of China and Mexico different from each other is an important question. So we will be discussing them now. So first we are discussing about China. So in China actually elections are held regularly after 5 years for electing country's parliament. It was called the country's parliament was called Quango Renmin Daibyo Dawi. The actual meaning of this is National People's Congress. The National People Congress has power to appoint the president of the country. It has nearly 3000 members elected from all over the China, and they are elected by army. Now before if you need to contest the election, the candidate need the approval of the Chinese Communist Party over there. Only those who are members of the Chinese Communist Party or 8 smaller parties allied to it are only allowed to contest the elections. The rest of the parties are not allowed to contest election. It is according to 2002 and 2003. The government is always formed by Communist Party. Now this is all about China. So how the Communist Party of China is dominating over the people, and the candidates which are not belonging to Communist Party or which are away, far away, or which are new are not have a right to get participated in the elections. They are not having a right to contest in the elections. Now if we talk about Mexico, so in its independence in 1930, Mexico hold election after 6 years to elect its president. Country has never been under a military or dictator rule, but until 2000 every election was won by party which was PRI or Institutional Revolutionary Party. Opposition parties did contest the election, but they never managed to win. PRI was known to use many dirty tricks to win the election, and all those who were employed in the government offices had to attend its party meetings. Teachers of government school were also forced parents to vote PRI. So there either they give some cash or something else so that they could get a vote from those people. So this was the dirty tricks that were practiced by PRI in Mexico. Media largely ignored the activities of opposition political parties except to criticize them, and sometimes the polling booths were shifted from one place to another at the last minute so that the people cannot give their vote and PRI can eventually win the election. The PRI spent a large sum of money in campaign for its candidates. So that is the dirty tips and tricks that were practiced by PRI so that it can win the elections every time. So the two features of democracy that we can see from the text that we discussed today is, first, in a democracy the final decision always rests with those elected by people. Means the ruler who has been chosen by people, only the final decision should rest by under him and not under any external agency. And second is, a democracy must be based on a free and fair election where those currently in power have a fair chance of losing. Means in the current time, if any party is ruling over any country, then in the next election it might be possible that that party loses the election and another party comes and takes over the rule. So this is only a key feature of democracy. If one party is losing and next party is about to rule, so that is a feature of democracy. So that is that parties continue to change. If about 80 to 90 years a single party is ruling over the country, that is not a democratic country, just like we see in Mexico as well as in China. So that's all for today, students. Thank you and have a nice day.